Welcome to the Soulful Valley podcast, the sanctuary for soul-led entrepreneurs, creatives, and changemakers ready to rise. I'm your host, Katie Carey, best-selling author, book collaboration mentor, publisher, and energy alchemist, here to help you tune into your truth, amplify your voice, and align with the frequency of miracles. Each week, we dive into soulful conversations, transformational journeys, and the energies that shape our lives and businesses. It's time to evolve on purpose, because the world needs your light, your words, your legacy. Let's begin. Are you ready to share your soul's truth with the world? We're calling in writers, mystics and visionaries for 2 transformational book collaborations. Soulful Poems Volume 4 for the poetic voices of this new era, and Evolving on Purpose, Angels, Spirit Guides and the Frequency of Miracles for those guided by the unseen. Your words have the power to heal, uplift and ripple across the world. And if you've ever dreamed of being part of something bigger, we invite you to watch the trailers for our international award-winning movie and join our Zero Limits community on Facebook, where we're celebrating global premieres, backstage magic, and preparing for the big launch on Amazon Prime and Apple TV later this year. Check the show notes now to join the movement. Your miracle moment is waiting. Jeanie Davidson is a transformational coach, award-winning author, and creator of the Lumen Method. Clarity, meaning, flow. A long-time entrepreneur, investor and founder of Rise Studios, she blends intuitive insight with strategic experience to help you dissolve resistance and live a courageously authentic life. Featured in the film Zero Limits, Jeanie leads the Flow to Freedom community, where she empowers you to align your life with purpose, clear vision, and enduring inner trust. Hello and welcome to the Soulful Valley podcast, Jeanie.
Hi, Katie.
Oh, it's lovely to meet you, Jeanie. You're welcome. Jeanie is one of the ladies featured in the Zero Limits movie with me. So I'm really excited to have someone else from the movie on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you too.
Now, Jeanie, your episode is called The Moment You Know. Can you share a little story about a time when you just knew, but the decision ahead wasn't easy, and what happened?
So the main one that comes to mind is one of the biggest ones, which is when I left a relationship that was harmful. And it was a long-standing relationship. I had done much healing within myself before I made that decision, but when I felt it inside of me, I was in a ton of debt. I mean, over $300,000 US with this relationship, and have 3 kids. And it felt like a huge mountain, like the impossible. But when the moment I knew, it was like the point of no return, where I wasn't even afraid. It was just, I knew it would be hard, or I thought it would be hard actually. And I just went with it, and all of the fog and all of the uncertainty just kind of dissipated rather quickly, because I knew and I went with it. And it was probably the best decision I think I've made, really, truly, in maybe all of my life. And it's it wasn't that long ago, it was just like 5 years ago, but it was really, truly the most difficult and the most important decision I've made for me and my kids.
I can totally relate to this, Jeanie, because it sounds like you're actually speaking my story.
Isn't that funny how we find each other like
Isn't
this?
it?
Yeah.
I have 3 children. Are you serious? My second divorce was 5 years ago. I walked out on a really toxic marriage with the second one, and I had ignored my intuition for quite a while, but eventually I got there. But I think that was because I connected with a lot of, it was starting this podcast that helped me to get there, because I started to connect with all sorts of wonderful people. I started to invest in coaching and mentorship and things, and in my creativity, and everything changed. And I also just eradicated over 210 grand of debt.
Katie, oh my gosh, look at it.
Don't you love it? Don't you just love the synchronicities?
Yes, it is. It's wow. Oh my goodness. Okay. So you feel that. That's
I know.
amazing.
And I've walked away from 2 marriages. It took me too long. I say it took me too long with both of them, but it was divine timing eventually, wasn't it? All of the lessons were there.
Yeah. Wow. What a force. What a force you are. But it's something you've harnessed. And then you're right, because it's something you knew, but the moment to act on it, it comes. Yeah. And it's like, once you've decided, there's so much energy in that. And then everything unfolded. And I love what you said about how you encountered other people, because that was part of my process too. That's interesting you mentioned that, because sometimes, it can be a lonely journey. And so I actually was delving into podcasts and just finding inspiring people, but kind of like your podcast. I was listening to podcasts, but you were engaging in conversations. I did Toastmasters, and I engaged with people that were really interesting. And it took me out of where I was, that space I was residing. And then it just uplifted me. Amazing. I love to hear that you did that. And wow, 3 kids and everything.
And so we both did that in 2020 as well.
Whoa, look at us. High five to
us. Jeanie, many of our listeners feel stuck between what they know deep down and what feels safe. We've been there.
Yes.
What helps someone trust that inner knowing when fear or doubt kicks in?
The biggest thing is counterintuitive, to be honest, because a lot of culture, at least in recent years, has been about reducing decisions, reducing the number of decisions. So I don't know if you remember, but with various CEOs of large companies, they were saying, oh, just wear the same clothes every day so you have less decisions to make. And to some extent, I believe that's relevant when you're in that kind of space where you're so used to making decisions. But if you're not used to making decisions, it is very important to remember your own voice. And so I believe it's about making very small decisions progressively and then larger decisions as you go, because you can then really, number one, hear yourself, because you may not be used to it. Like, I even used to defer to people because I was such a nice person, I would say, oh, I don't know what I want. What do you want? This kind of mentality. But the truth is, your voice matters in even the small ways, and then it awakens the larger decisions and the larger knowing. And so I used to even keep on my phone a note that would remind me of decisions I made that worked. And I would even go back in time and then realize, what are things that I did, changes I made, and it worked out for the better. So instead of judging yourself for the things that haven't worked, or the gap between where you think you want to be and where you are, it's really noticing when you got it right for you, and then even documenting it if necessary, which I think is very helpful, and then making small decisions and just checking in with yourself, and then progressively more and more. And then suddenly it's like this amazing sense of knowing.
And you come to a place of deep trust in your own decisions.
Yes. Yeah. Exercising it like a muscle.
Yeah. You talk about aligned choices. Can you define what that means to you? And how can someone tell the difference between alignment and avoidance? Now, I see this a lot with people around me, clients and peers. And I think sometimes people do get a bit confused with that.
Yes, because we're always taught to push through things And I'm in America, so I mean, especially America, it's like push through, keep going, keep going. But really, the alignment versus the avoidance, I think of it this way. Alignment feels light and breezy and like sunlight. It feels like fresh air. And avoidance feels like dark and heavy and depressing. It just feels
Yeah.
so heavy and dread. It feels like dread. And so that part, some decisions or bringing yourself into alignment, sometimes it's very easy. Like, if you go outside in nature, you're gonna feel good, right?
Mm.
But some things are easy, but some things aren't. So like, even for example, taxes here, we just had tax season. And so getting my taxes done every year, I just don't love it. And so that's an example of one of those feelings of dread. But of course, I must do my taxes.
Mm.
And so the way I think of it in those circumstances where it's not as obvious on the front end is to actually imagine how you feel once you do what it is that you're contemplating. And so will I feel lighter and more breezy after it's done? Yes. And then, okay, I'm going to push through this, maybe make it more pleasant along the way as much as I can. Maybe I'll have a nice cup of tea and a candle and make it really in a beautiful place during my taxes. So it's a little more enjoyable, but I get it done. And then I know I'm going to feel better after. But if it's a decision that you need to make and you feel a little bit of like dread even after it's done, that's a very big indicator that it's not in alignment for you. And so
Mm.
actually, we just talked about that past relationship, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I actually did do this exercise, and though I didn't realize it at the time, now we're talking about him. I did actually do that because one of my daughters was going off to college, and I started envisioning, what will this be like later? And I felt dread. I just really felt dread. Like, even if we work out all the issues, will I feel
Mm.
better? No. Mm-mm. And that's part of how I knew. That was actually the beginning of the end in a very good way. And then
Yeah,
the beginning of
yeah.
everything, that came thereafter that was
Did it
really.
take you a while to get there?
I will say that I did. What's funny is my kids said, "Mom, you move on so fast. What is but the reason is because I was doing the inner work before I
Yeah.
came to the religion, because there is a bit of, everything prepares us for where we're going,
Mm.
and some things accelerate that preparedness. And so, yes, I would say that gosh, I don't know exactly how long, but in subtle little ways. Like, even you mentioned you were doing your podcast. Well, I was seeking out others because you know how they always say, who are the 5 people you're around the most?
Yeah.
Well, you know who my 5 people were? My ex and my 3 kids, and then some and clients.
Yeah.
And so I was just not really expanding my connections and feeling like it was like being a victim of circumstance,
Mm.
because all of my life was built around what was. So it was incumbent upon me to create circumstances that were more ideal for my growth, for my expansion, and then doing the inner work and healing. And then once the moment arose, oh, it was just, yep, got it, all done. I know it.
It's a great place to to finally
Yes, it is.
to finally come
It is
to
a great,
and be okay with that decision. Um,
yes.
so, what would you say to someone who is always waiting for the perfect moment to make a change they already feel called to make?
Sometimes people say there is no perfect moment, but I actually believe that there is a perfect moment. And that perfect moment is when you feel it in your bones and your body. It's like you might have that fear and hesitation, but actually I feel like you don't have that fear and hesitation. So if you're not feeling the perfect moment, it means there is a little bit more work to be done and preparation, where you build that inner trust. So it's about what we were just talked about, making the small decisions so you start checking back in with yourself, and then also creating the more ideal circumstances where when the moment arises, it's just like they say, prepare for opportunity. And it doesn't mean you have to have all of the answers yet. It just means there is a moment where you feel the pull. And the moment you feel that pull more than any other time, that's when to act. And you don't have to have all the answers figured out. Sometimes all the answers are clear and it's amazing. And sometimes it's just step, breathe. And then the next step comes step, breathe. And that's okay too. Because the more you step into it when you have that feeling, the more the road just opens up, the light shines on your road, and it just becomes so very, very clear and lovely.
I love that because I've experienced that.
Oh, I believe you have.
All of the baby steps, and you don't know where it's leading, but it's delightful eventually.
Yes, it's kind of fun, like a little adventure, or maybe a big adventure.
And so many things change that you could never have even visualized for yourself because you couldn't imagine a life that different.
Yes.
I love where this conversation is going.
Me too.
What role does the body or intuition play in your decision making process, and how do you personally tune in?
Ah, well, I used to believe that the spiritual realm and intuition implicitly was separate. Like it was this airy space beyond. And I didn't know that the physical body was so important to it. But once I became aware that the physical realm is related to the spiritual realm, that changed everything, actually, because we're here on earth, we're in the physical realm, so it's our connection point. And so ways that I've been able to tap into it. And so I do use my intuition quite a bit. I am a very logic, like I'm very both brains, both sides of the brain kind of person. And so, but I will say that I do lean into my intuition. And mostly I make sure I verify with logic, but for the most part, I trust it, just like we were talking about the next step. But I've also been harnessing this. And it's just, part of working with people and doing this myself, it's like it's become more clear, more clear, more clear. So it's very easy now. But some ways that I like to do this are ways of releasing, because when you think of, like, even right now, I'm in the LA area. I woke up and I had, it's morning here. And so I do things to kind of like release what's in me, just let it out. Sometimes it could be by breathing, like inhaling to the count of 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6. That's a quick and easy way. Any time of day, if I want to release whatever is in me, I'll just do that real quick. Or I'll just close my eyes and get centered, and I'll ask questions to myself, like, and get a feeling. And this is part of just the practice of doing it. Other things, journaling, I do love writing. I know some of your episodes, you've talked to people where there's something very cathartic and powerful and this gets back into the physical part, the connection of mind, thoughts, feelings, and your body, because you're actually physically. And so when I write, I'll just write out any of my thoughts. There's such thing as I've heard of before, like morning pages, or I call it like monkey mind. Or I've heard that Tim Ferriss podcast, he talks about that. But it's, you just write out what's in your mind and clear it out. And that creates space. I do meditate, and I love meditating because you have so many thoughts all the time. It's like a bombardment of thoughts. And how do you create the change when all of these thoughts are coming with or without your attention to it? And so to me, it's this releasing is a very important process, and it's ongoing. And so that's one way. I also do a bit of grounding, like where I'll just picture, like get very comfortable and just picture like my body connecting to the earth, and then the air and the heavens, and if you will. Also I am very conscious of spending time to myself, where I must consciously, proactively plan for time with myself,
Mm.
because I know a lot of your listeners are very empathic, and I'm also empathic, and I know you're very empathic. And
Yeah.
so when you're empathic, it is interesting because there's this tendency to want to go inward to kind of protect yourself and come back to yourself. And I think that's very important. It is also important, though, as we mentioned, of going out and socializing. So it's this balance of social interaction with self interaction and hearing your voice. And so it's really it's important to be very conscious of both, because in order to grow, even having relationships, we can't avoid the relationships. We must engage in those relationships. And even being open, like I do believe our voice, your voice for you, my voice for me, is the most important voice. And I also believe that sometimes other people like you and I, we talk, there's something you're going to say that's going to help me on my path, right? There's something I may say that's going to help you on your path at this point in time. And people we meet, even with the movie, I mean, all of these amazing women that we've met, we have so much growth opportunity. And sometimes when you're working in this field, it's like, you know, we get in this kind of expert mode, which is, we're all growing and we want to be adults, but there's also this childlike curiosity where we can always grow. And so I would say when people resonate with you, it's important to be able to be open to that and hear their words and hear their input, and also come back and check back in with you always, because this is the most important voice, but it's an exchange, an ongoing exchange and balance of both.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, thanks, Katie.
Um, you mentioned that hard choices can actually be the most loving ones. Can you unpack that a bit?
Yes. So the hard choices are really the honest choices. And I believe in very kind, loving honesty in all ways with everyone. And the reason they feel hard only because we're raised to not have our voice. You're raised to be a kid and be silent, perhaps in some cases. Maybe in my family, we were told, do as you're told and don't,
Yeah.
and don't even talk about it, really. And so
definitely in mine, it's still like that now, actually.
Yeah. So it's like it starts so early and it becomes a lifelong habit. But yeah, because you could get in trouble for being honest. It wasn't just not doing it. It was actually, you could have been penalized or hurt, or so we really had built this habit of avoiding honesty because it wasn't safe. But the safest thing in adulthood is honesty. Yeah. And even for kids too, like I really think it's important not to suppress honesty with kids. It's just teaching them to channel it and be kind in the delivery. I feel like that's really the best way to do it. And the other thing about living honestly is it gives everyone else permission too. And so I don't know about you, but like when I have friends or peers or anyone really, even my kids, even when they're honest, it's refreshing to me because I know what to expect. I know what I get with them, and I know it's reliable. It's going to be, and it's their truth, which maybe I might have another opinion, but I also like to be open. I'll hear it, but I'm still going to check back in with me. But it creates closeness. Don't you think? Like it really.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We all want closeness.
I've become more open and honest over the last few years with everyone around me. And I think you can see that helps. It helps everybody. And we all grow. We're all growing together because we all have that. So we're all quite open with each other now.
Yes.
Regardless of what the situation is. And often most of the things that we never used to talk about, like money.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes. You bring up such a good point. Yes, you're right. Because you're right. The what creates distance is the avoidance. It is the avoidance. And when even during that period, it increased more after the relationship ended and, was in this mode. I once had a little argument with my daughter, and my sister commented about it. We went to a family event, and she said, and she just said, "Oh, you guys are good?" And I said, "Yeah, of course. What do you mean?" And I said, "Oh, we already apologized and said, we said our piece." And she says, "Oh, wow, that was quick." Because I actually think it's being honest and also quick, because it actually builds a mountain when you allow things to fester. And especially when you get into attachment styles and how we all have our coping mechanisms of what has gotten us through life and relationships. And so when you actually deal with it, I mean, and sometimes like a little time is okay. Some people take longer to process, but it's that figuring it out what works for the relationship. But in general, kind honesty, loving discussion, and just honesty about everything, no matter what it is so healing and
Yes.
refreshing.
And when you're that honest with people, they are more honest with you, and they come to you. They can come
Yes.
to you with anything, which if there's been that block of being honest with each other, they don't know how you're going to judge them, do they? So then they don't come
Yes.
to you.
Yes, you're right. There is something very interesting about the hidden unknown. The hidden unknown is I like to see things at face value. hmm and I think everyone does, because
Mm.
it's safer. And so especially in relationships, it's safer to know what to expect. And when you're doing it in a kind, loving way, it's very safe. And then it creates that closeness. It closes the gap of uncertainty.
Absolutely. Are you in another relationship since your last one ended? Have you?
Yes, I have. So I have someone that I have been seeing for a good amount of time. And, it's interesting because it's, I didn't have, I didn't have fear about the relationship. And I feel like for the most part, this has been a very important relationship for me because it reflected back my worth to me,
Yeah.
because it was such a contrast to what I was accustomed to, that it's like I can almost see in the mirror this growth. It's so much more healthy. Like, sure, there's things, working out these things, and so and time will tell with everything, but I can say that it's definitely like a safe space because of the honesty, because of oh wow, this is interesting. Look at you're now you're getting into my I'm like, oh yeah, there is honesty. There is, yes. But it's also a kind, loving interaction. And it's really important. And I always say this to my daughters too, because I have two daughters that are a little bit older. And whenever they're dating, because and I also think it's okay to not know where everything's going to lead, right?
Yeah.
I think as women, or maybe girls, I don't know if it's something that's ingrained in us, but sometimes it's like you want to know, okay, what is this? Let's define this. Let's define this. But if you feel the need to define it, then yeah, that's important to you, and you must hear that. But also sometimes, again, like we were talking about, the next step, the next step, the next step. And even right now, it's like I feel like I'm in a growth mode, and so it's like it's always important when you're with someone that you're growing together. And maybe not always at the same moment exactly, but just the general trend. And if you're not growing together, that's something to be observed. But if you're growing together, it's awesome. And like with my kids, when my daughters, when they're dating, sometimes they're really fixated on, what does this mean? What does this mean? And where is it going? And I'm like, you know, every single relationship you've had, because they're younger, they're going to have other relationships possibly. I'm like, you're actually moving up on this kind of vibrational scale of your relationships, because each one has been an improvement upon the other, because you've built that ability to get close, to be vulnerable, to be having some standards of what you expect in the relationship, and it's what you'll allow and what you'll not allow. And it's an interesting balance, and really with them, I've seen, gosh, in the past year or two, like they have just been like this, like each relationship, I'm like, this is great. And I said, be okay with if it works out or doesn't, either way, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine because you've already set a new bar for yourself. And that's really what it's about.
Thanks for sharing such a personal story. I just wondered, because we seem to be a mirror of each other, and I have found a relationship that is completely different to the ones before as well.
Oh my goodness, look at us. Oh, Katie, I love it.
That's why I thought I want to ask the question.
Yes, of course.
So you've been through your own transformational journey now. Mm-hmm. What's something that you had to leave behind in order to live more in alignment?
The biggest thing I had to leave behind was the fear of people not loving me for who they thought I was. And it's actually not really hard to let go of that once you start doing this. And I'm sure you know this. Because whenever a space comes, it leaves room for something to fill that space. And so when you're, for lack of a better term, I'll just say vibrating, like vibrating, because we're all energy. Whenever you're vibrating, like when I think of, this, when I was in my former relationship that was so painful, when we met, it was so, magical and everything, but I'm sure I must have been, vibrating. Oh, you can't see on my thing, on my camera, like right here. And so I matched. But then as I was, becoming more whole within myself, I'd start vibrating higher and then higher, just like I was saying, raising the bar. And so when you start vibrating higher, the main thing is the more of the people that resonate with where you are show up. So it's not really a loss. There is something comfortable about having people in your life, but if it's causing you pain or them pain, it's okay, because not all relationships are forever. Some relationships are for a time, and not all relationships are meant to be the most intense relationships. Some are meant to be more slight, and that's okay. So it's just like, even with the film, I mean, all of these lovely individuals coming in are filling a space. I was speaking with a cast member, and she was telling me how she lost some friends, but she said, my goodness, in the past 5 months, I've lost 3 friends. And now look, here's this like tribe of people coming in, and it's a space, and it's just the same. It's always like that, always like that. So it's okay. So I was afraid of not being loved for who people thought I was. But the truth is, just like we talked about, the moment I started being more honest, they adapted. The ones that love you will adapt. They'll adapt to it. And they'll just, sometimes they may think, oh, she's a little out there, but that's okay. I've always been that way. It's just more of who I am. And like you, more of who you are. Same thing.
And the more you show up, you're being out there, the more the right people show up for you as well.
Yes. It really is. It's definitely, I have no doubt in my mind it's the right thing to do. So any apprehension or fear, it's unnecessary, because it really is like that.
And I had a lot of experiences like that in the first collaboration that I did. So the first time the people around me saw me writing in a book and become a best-selling author, they had a story for themselves about that, and quite a few people did cut me off, so which was quite painful at the time, because it was during those first couple of years with COVID and my divorce and all the other things going on,
right, so when you need them the most.
So it was like a lot of people fell away, but now I realize that there was a reason for that, and of course there's a lot more people have come in, so it is wonderful.
Yeah. And it is, you bring up a good point, because sometimes you really do long for people to support you no matter what, especially those that you've loved forever. But expectation's a tricky thing. Yeah, and so when you start to really trust yourself more, like you did when you were writing your book and doing all this, it doesn't, it becomes, even if it might hurt a little bit, see how adaptive you were with it. Like that's for all of it is, you start to adapt where even though if you have that hurt and you step beyond it, it's going to be okay on the other side, because people always come, especially as you're becoming more of yourself, and even your book. I mean, that's beautiful, and it does, that kind of gets into the honesty thing, because sometimes I wonder if when people aren't supportive, maybe they're not being honest with themselves. Maybe like when people if they get resentful, or maybe they feel hurt, and that's natural because they want you to stay there with them,
Yeah.
and then they feel that fear you're going to leave, but it's okay. Everyone's more comfortable when you're being yourself, and those that are meant to be there will be there, and those that aren't there yet will show up.
Absolutely. When someone makes a bold aligned choice, it can impact their relationships or life circumstances. So how do you navigate those ripple effects? Because when you make those choices, there is a ripple, isn't there?
Yes.
It affects
Well,
everyone else around you.
yeah, I would say the other part is, yeah, it's going inward, but you're right. But actually, I'm glad I asked the question again, because it is important to be open to the new people coming, because even when you think of like during your loneliest times, right, you get kind of trapped in your own thoughts, and it's like this cycle that you can go down that rabbit hole. But that's why it's important to do these things, like we talked about: meditating, journaling, maybe breathing, doing some resets throughout the day to preserve your well-being. Another thing is just taking up space for yourself. Like, this sounds a little bit odd, but it's about being okay with other people waiting for you. And this might seem strange to say, but I see this a lot, like with women that I taught, especially women. So like when you think of like a CEO, which is like a leader, right? When we're in our lives, we're our own leaders. And so there's this calm presence that any great CEO has. And so if you're like the CEO of your life, the CEO of your business, the CEO of your family, it's like this calm presence where you're okay with a little bit of delay if you're thinking or you're doing something. And I think of this as kind of like self-care, especially as women juggling things a lot. There's this pressure to move on. And when you're empathic too, you feel other people putting pressure on you because you sense it, because you're so in tuned. But what I say is hold it, let yourself endure that little bit of discomfort to give yourself the time to do what you need to do. And more progressively, this is almost like the decision-making muscle, but this is a different muscle. This is a being in your own space. And I'm not saying like in a manipulative way, I'm saying in a way that you need, like for your well-being. Because if you're always hurrying and having to move on because other people have expectations, this is about expectations. There's too. They expect you to hurry. Well, that's okay, but 1 second's fine. A few minutes, and sometimes is fine. Just it's a practice of doing that. And like even on Zoom calls, for example, like if you're going to be on a Zoom call, give yourself the presence. If you're in a meeting, like the presence and attention is so important. It's the biggest gift we have for each other. So if you feel like, oh, I'm too busy, I can't do this, then create the time and space, because I consider it self-care. Self-care is getting your nails done, getting a massage. It's allowing yourself the time and space to plan out your week, plan out your time, be present on a conversation. And the rest of it will take care of itself the more and more you start doing that. So
we need, ladies, we all need to give ourselves permission to do what we need to do to love ourselves.
Yes, exactly, Katie.
Even I used to be really bad at feeling bad if I had to cancel something because I wasn't very well. And I really had to overcome that, not letting somebody else down, because even with the podcast, because we've booked a podcast interview and it's, I've booked into their time slot. But
Yeah.
I learned to be okay with that because you need to be in the right energy to do this anyway.
Yes. I love that you say that because, well, number one, it speaks highly of you because you have that you're caring and
Mm,
you value your commitments. At the same time, there is an importance of things being right with you. And so there's nothing to apologize. If someone's sick, they're sick. It's okay.
mm.
But we're taught that we need to keep on going and keep on going. But no, it's all right. It's all right. So yes, I love that you say that.
Wonderful. The Zero Limit series is all about living a life without the limits we once believed were real. So, what does living with zero limits mean to you? And what's one shift our listeners can make today to start moving forwards towards that?
Okay. To me, zero limits means somewhat like we talked about, just being honest with who you are. It's about hearing your inner voice because every single one of us has one. And when you hear it, it may be obviously fine, but it may not, and that's okay. So anything you feel called to do, something that nags at you inside, but you just keep pushing it out and pushing it out, it's not meant to be ignored because it is you. And so to me, zero limits is living with that voice ever present and embracing it, letting it lead you down that path without having to keep questioning your choices, just trusting and knowing and really it's also creating zero limits for others because then it gives them permission to do the same. Whether they will or not is up to them, but it's living by example of you in your own life. Almost
Mm,
like, who am I when no one else is around?
yeah.
I'm still me. And maybe that wasn't always the case because in the past it was showing up in a way that wasn't as authentic as it is now. And so it's really living true to who you are and being open by extension to allowing others to live as they are and living in that honest state because it's truth. It's truth for me, it's truth for you, and it just feels amazing.
I love that. I could really feel that.
I want people to trust themselves. The way we're raised is such a disempowering way, and it discourages people. And I want people to dream again. In my book, I share a method that I walk my clients through. And we start by identifying blockages through an assessment. And the idea is that they have immediate results so they can start feeling better immediately. And then, of course, create fun every day. Create some variety. It's important to really tap into that almost like your childlike state in a way.
Aw, me too. Thanks, Katie.
Jeanie, is there anything else you'd like to share that we haven't covered today?
Well, I would just say that for the listeners, I really want to, I mean, you don't need anyone's permission. Sometimes you feel like you need the permission, but I just want to say, like, let yourself really take up the space you want, make the little choices, and when you check in with others, always come back to you and really make it this habit and document what things where you're right and where things have worked out and just build that confidence and that inner trust and you're going to see that the right people will show up just like you, Katie. I feel like you and I and everyone and it's going to be okay. The more you make the choices even if they feel hard at the time, the answers are going to come and you're going to be great and better for it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jeanie, where can people find you?
Well, I do have a website. It's jeaniedavidson.com, my name, Jeanie, Davidson, like son of David, Davidson.com. And there's a lot of buttons on there. You click any of them, they'll lead to me. And uh, I would say when you go there, if you press a button and reach out, please let me know that you came from Katie's podcast, because I would like to thank you and thank you, Katie, because it's really important. I want to know that and be able to express the gratitude to you for anyone that comes to visit me.
Thank you, Jeanie. And we'll pop the website in the show notes.
Yeah, certainly. And I do have little like fun things on there, and even like meditations and things that I offer. So it's like things that have been some of these tools that I've used for myself, and I do have those available there. So it's really nice. But I really need it. Like I want to be able to thank you for anyone that is connecting. It's really important to me, because this is meeting you and having this common ground, and just like there's this energy of people that come in our lives and that exchange. And so I love knowing this and being part of this with you. And
I've got shivers as you're saying this, because you know how many other women are out there who've been through what we've both been through, and maybe they haven't found their happiness on the other side of it yet. So it's good to have conversations like this, that, you know, we've been through difficult times, but we found the way in the end, and the tools that we've both used, you know, that's why we share them, because we want others to know that it doesn't have to be as hard as it was for us.
Exactly. I know, Katie, I love how we have this parallel. It's amazing.
Thank you so much for today, Jeanie.
You too. You too. Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed it.
You're welcome. Bye for now.
Hello, my name is Sarah Brown Atte, and my pen name is Sarah Bridget Brown. And I had the absolute privilege of working with Katie Carey on 3 of her beautiful collaborative books. So Evolving on Purpose 1 and 2, and Entangled No More. And if you are a coach, a healer, a therapist, anyone who wants to bring love and light and healing to this world, I highly recommend that you get in touch with Katie, because I am sure that one of her collaborations will be the right fit for you. Working with Katie really enabled me to connect to the inner child that I am still, and also everything that I have been wanting to put to paper for a long, long time. And she is one of these people who really knows what it takes to connect to yourself and to be able to bring forward your messages for the world. So if you are sitting on the fence about working with Katie, please get off it, get on a call with her and see how she can help you. And if you are looking for inner peace and serenity, if you are wanting heart-centered clarity and confidence, and soul-centered wisdom, vision, and desires, then I invite you to come and work with me to birth your best self. That is my one-to-one individual offering right now. And if you are interested in working with me, please reach out via my website. So you can go to sbhmentoring.com/contact, and there you will be able to fill in a form and book your soul call with me, where we will have a chat to see exactly what's going on in your life, why you feel the need to have this inner peace and serenity, and how you can connect to your heart and soul.
So ask yourself, is this for me? Give yourself some boundaries. Learn to trust your intuition now.
Thank you for tuning in to the Soulful Valley podcast. If today's episode spoke to your soul, share it with someone who needs it, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts to help others find our sacred space. Want to go deeper? Check out the show notes, where you can find links, all of our opportunities, and communities. And step into your power as an author or poet in one of our next best-selling books. The next chapter of your soul-led journey starts now. Until next time, keep evolving on purpose.